Everyone says that in the late period, they will destroy R. To support our source. On December 17, Russian President Vladimir Putin reopened a wound that has never healed in Russia-US relations. That is, the promise not to expand NATO eastward, once publicly declared. But what about reality? Putin used an extremely strong word. The West has sat on those commitments. Russia once truly believed it could become an equal part of the European family. But in response, Moscow's extended hand only met with increasingly suffocating blows. For Putin, the so-called European civilization is now just a rotten shell, covering moral and political decay. The Russian leader directly named the Biden administration. He accused the US of having drawn up a sophisticated plan to quickly disintegrate Russia from within. And listen to how he described European leaders. They are those who obediently follow Washington, hoping to scavenge some scraps from Russia's ruins. He asserted that President Donald Trump was right in saying that if he were still in the White House, the Ukraine crisis would never have happened. A message with propaganda value shows that Russia highly values Trump's political reality. Describing the state of the Kyiv government, Putin used an image, extremely symbolic, of golden toilets. According to him, just looking at the extreme luxury and corruption is enough to see how Ukrainian state is rotting and disintegrating. And finally, in a sarcastic way, Putin used the word pig to refer to the West. Best reaction? When called the chairman of the Austrian Committee on NATO Expansion, Gunter Feileiner, decided to defeat Putin by portraying himself as a little pig. An act that made the online community laugh heartily, but people questioned. Does this mean the West is ignoring Russia's provocation, or are they truly like pigs? The Russian president believes that his use of the word pig does not refer to any specific individual, but he used that word to refer to an unspecified group of people defined in that way, because this came to mind during the exchange with the audience, who were military personnel. Putin stated that he did not intend to refer to any specific individual by name, and never attacks individuals and never allows himself to do anything similar. The Russian president meant a group of people in general, an unspecified group, as lawyers often say. If that is the case, then Europe also has no more room to twist things. But this also makes experts look back and wonder why, until now, the West has been so obsessed with Russia. Why aren't NATO and the EU, entities that advocate peace and economic prosperity, been willing to push themselves into a direct confrontation, even risking a third world war with Russia? Is this simply about protecting Ukraine, or are there other cold calculations hidden behind the thought of this war? To understand this obsession, we must look at the geographical map of the blood-soaked pages of history. For Europe, Russia is not just a country. Russia is a massive entity right next door, a giant. Geopolitical researchers generally agree on this. Whoever controls Eastern Europe controls the heartland. Whoever controls the heartland dominates the world. The West is obsessed with Russia because they understand that a strong Russia, controlling Ukraine, would become an unstoppable counterweight to the US-led unipolar order. That existence is the sole reason for this alliance. If Russia weakens or disintegrates, the US security umbrella in Europe will lose its legitimacy, and Washington's influence over the continent will vanish into thin air. So why are they willing to confront directly at this moment? Because for NATO, Ukraine is the last outpost. If Ukraine completely collapses, NATO's red line will be pushed back to the borders of Poland and the Baltic states. A direct confrontation at this time, through aid and advisors, is seen as a cheaper price, compared to having to directly spill American or German blood on European soil later. What does the West gain by pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine? Aid to Ukraine is not an act of charity. For the US, NATO, and especially the EU, this is a strategic investment with an extremely high return in political, military, and brain dead. But this conflict has changed everything. For the West, having Ukraine fight is the best way to weaken Russia's military capability without sacrificing a single NATO soldier. This is an extremely effective attrition strategy against the adversary. Russia is having to expend its most elite resources, while NATO only needs to deplete its stockpiles of older generation or gradually obsolete weapons in exchange for absolute security for its own territory. This is where Western arms corporations benefit the most. Ukraine is now the world's largest laboratory.
Modern weapons, from HIMARS missiles and Leopard 2 tanks to Patriot air defense systems,
are all being tested in direct confrontation with Russia's top equipment and extremely intense electronic warfare environment. The data obtained from the Ukrainian battlefield is worth billions of dollars, something no military exercise could provide. It helps the West refine weapons, enhance combat capabilities, and, more importantly, promote their brand. When a weapon system proves successful in Ukraine, orders from around the world pour into the manufacturer. Aiding Ukraine is essentially a way to stimulate demand, forcing EU countries to purchase new weapons to replenish the stocks they've transferred, creating millions of jobs and a massive flow of money back into the pockets of major defense industry giants. The EU and G7, instead of digging into the pockets of Europeans already suffering from inflation and high energy prices,
are using the opponent's own money to fund arms contracts.
This approach helps alleviate internal political pressure in countries like Germany or France, while creating a sustainable financial mechanism for Ukraine to maintain its state apparatus. Finally, continuing aid is a way for the EU to assert its strategic autonomy. In the context of the US potentially changing policies under new administration, Europe is forced to prove it can lead its own security. Countries like Germany and Sweden drastically increasing defense budgets and taking on the bulk of aid in the first half of 2020
shows they want to step out of Washington's shadow. Success means the EU.
Conversely, if Ukraine collapses, the EU will lose all credibility and face a massive refugee wave, along with prolonged instability right at its doorstep. Returning to the present, the process for a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine still faces many challenges, but the US side is concerned that there is still a long road ahead, according to US Secretary of State Mark. But the most difficult problems are often the ones solved last. He emphasized that any peace agreement must be acceptable to both Russia and Ukraine. President Trump has had more meetings with foreign leaders about the conflict in Ukraine than on any other topic. What the US is trying to understand is what Ukraine and Russia might accept. In order to find common ground between the two,
both have their own positions, and we will see if we can push them closer together
to achieve some kind of accord or not. The US Secretary of State believes conflicts usually end. One side surrenders or a negotiated solution is reached. However, in the current conflict, there is no sign that either side will surrender in the near future. Therefore, according to Rubio, only a negotiated solution can open the opportunity to end the conflict. He emphasized that the final decision belongs to Ukraine and Russia, not the US.
Washington's role now is to mediate, not to impose an agreement on either side.
On Ukraine's side, President Volodymyr Zelensky considers security guarantees from the West a key element of a peace agreement. He believes this is necessary to prevent the risk of Russia continuing military actions in the future.
But Russia has a different view on a ceasefire.
According to Putin, Russia is ready to consider security measures so that Ukraine can hold elections. More specifically, he made a rather notable commitment. Russia may temporarily suspend long-range deep strikes into Ukrainian territory during the election period. He emphasized that millions of Ukrainians living in Russia need to be facilitated to participate in voting. He argued that the current authorities in Ukraine need to be legitimized through a genuine election. The Russian leader argued that without an election, the legitimacy of the Kiev leadership apparatus would be a major question mark. If Ukraine intends to exploit the election as a shield to buy time or halt the offensive momentum of the Russian army, that would be a serious miscalculation.
Like the journey? Subscribe and join the next expedition.